Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start with a story from a Black Friday long ago, a day renowned for its unbeatable deals and sometimes its heated confrontations. As a young parent trying to fulfill his child's Christmas wish, our OP found himself drawn to a Radio Shack advertisement promising a laptop for under $200. An incredible bargain at the time. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like if you enjoy the content, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a juicy story. Next time, get up earlier. Years ago, when my wife and I were young in our careers, broke as hell, our oldest boy's only Christmas wish was a laptop computer. This was way out of our reach financially, so I had been looking everywhere for a good deal on one. I found an ad for a Radio Shack holiday special selling a pretty decent laptop for under $200 in their Black Friday sale. This was at the time an incredible price. I went down to the Radio Shack and chatted a bit with the staff to find out what to expect and how many they had. They admitted to me that they only had one, and that they only had one or two of the other doorbuster items. They opened at 5 a.m., and the guy I chatted with recommended I arrive early if I wanted it. Okay, maximum effort. After our Thanksgiving dinner, I took a turkey-induced nap, and after we put the kids to bed, I headed down to the strip mall with a book and a camp chair. I was the only one, so I set up right by the door. It was after midnight before anyone else arrived, and people trickled in between then and about 3 a.m. Everyone was pretty chatty about what they wanted. At first, I was the only one who was there for the laptop. When it got closer to opening, there were some different sorts of people showing up. Some try to talk their way into line, buy a spot for $20 or whatever. About 4 a.m., a guy rolls up in a flashy car, some luxury brand, I don't remember, and comes straight to the head of the line with the Starbucks coffee in hand. He gives me a story about how his kid has cancer and that his kid's only Christmas wish was that specific laptop. I tell the guy, sorry, but this was my kid's Christmas wish too. That's why I'm here. The guy keeps turning it up. He gets really mean and nasty about how selfish we all are, that we don't want to help a cancer kid, and gets right into my personal space. I keep telling him no, and his tone continues to escalate. At that point, I stood up, folded my camp chair, and told him, I'm just some guy without much money, but I got up early enough to be first in line here. If my kid was battling cancer, I would have been here even earlier, and I sure as hell wouldn't have taken time to stop for coffee. Either you're a liar or a terrible dad. But either way, I'm not moving. Next time, get up earlier. I'd like to say everyone clapped, but mostly they just tried to stay out of it and look the other way. The guy just went to the end of the line, and everyone else looked embarrassed. The nice, chatty, excited vibe was gone. I could tell by the guy's body language that he was going to try and rush in and get what he wanted after the doors opened, but the Shack employees did a great job. Just before 5 a.m., they came out with a clipboard and went down the line, writing down our names and which doorbuster we were buying. Then they gave me a slip with the laptop model printed on it. They had all the limited quantity items behind the counter, and I was out of there with a laptop in hand in about 5 minutes flat. I love the way they handled it and gave everyone a slip so there wasn't a rush. This is a great way to ensure everyone's safe. Next time, get up earlier. And our second story. People don't understand why you're leaving early. I was working for a smallish company, about 60 employees across several locations, IT support for both hardware, laptops, phones, and software. When I was hired just under 9 years ago, it was verbally agreed that instead of clocking any call-outs as overtime, I would just take the time in lieu. Call-outs were always minimal, and there were never any issues with me taking the time here and here to make up for it. Any calls in the middle of the night were quickly resolved, and I had no problem getting back to sleep. Appointments in the middle of the day were fine because of the additional hours from whenever. This worked well for almost my entire time there. I also always started early, just depending on when I left the house, got into the office, got my coffee. Could have been anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes, because I would leave the house earlier so as to not wake the family if school was off that day. I didn't care at that point, never bothered me. They got free time from me, but again, I didn't care because honestly, what else did I have to do? It was a great job, until it wasn't. One weekend, I was working on some hardware maintenance, cleaning up wiring, Ethernet plugs, installing a new UPS that took me the better part of Sunday to complete. 6 to 8 hours. This was understood, approved in advance, and appreciated. The following week, I decided to start burning those extra hours up. I still came in early, as I had done for years, but started leaving an hour early from my regular in time every day if nothing was going on. This is important. If something needed done, I got it done. I was reachable via email until early evening and phone pretty much 24/7. This particular week was slow, so I had nothing going on. I left an hour early for the first 4 days. On Friday, my boss comes to me and gently says, "People notice that you've been leaving early this week. I'd like you to make sure you stay in your office until the scheduled end of day in case someone needs you." I explained to him that I was burning up loo days, and he just reiterated that it looks bad to others. Seriously? You can't tell the others that I work my 40 hours a week, just not at the same time as them? Fine. I immediately submitted 4 hours of overtime for the hours that I didn't take in lieu. I still showed up at the office at whatever time I got there, but didn't start any work until 8 a.m. If asked, I would say, sure, 8 a.m. start time. If I got called outside of office hours, depending on how long I spent on the issue, I logged it as overtime. User calls me at 7 p.m. to ask a question, I answer him in 30 seconds, 1 hour OT. When my boss then started to ask, "How come you're submitting all of this overtime?" I responded with a simple, "Some people don't understand or like me taking lieu time, so I need to claim it as overtime since I'm at my desk from 8 to 4. Because I wasn't available at his beck and call, it ended up costing them more money. 95% of my job could be done from home because of full remote access, but that stupid old school mentality means that people in the office need to see you at your desk all day long. I left the company very shortly after that for a much better paying job with full-time work from home. Good for you. Doing things just because they look bad or look good is so dumb. And yet, so many managers follow those rules because they're too stupid to measure results in any other way. Know your worth. And our next story. Don't threaten me with a good time. A lot of lawyers are making the news with their bad decisions, which reminded me of a story I hope you enjoy. I had an appearance for a pretrial hearing in a small town court. This hearing went okay for my client. The other attorney, opposing counsel, or OC, did not react strongly positively or negatively, which made sense because the decision was basically a 60-40 split of what we were disputing. Neither of us was a big winner or loser. His demeanor changed drastically after the judge dismissed us. In the hallway, he stomped up to me while I was discussing next steps with my client and said we needed to talk. I said something along the lines of, "As soon as I'm done with client." OC huffed off, and I finished my talk. To set the stage for this next part, I'm almost exactly average for height and weight. OC was probably 4-ish inches taller, 60-ish pounds heavier, and maybe 30-ish years my senior. Imagine a big belly, drinker's nose, and some flop sweat if he saw the elevator was out of service. So I said goodbye to the client and walked over. Without any small talk, he gave me something close to, "You think you can just walk in here and act like that?" This was confusing because nothing really went great or terrible for me or him, so I said something like, "Act like what?" This really set him off, and I pinky swear I was not trying to antagonize him with that question. OC then says, verbatim, "You better hope I never see you outside this court because I will kick the crap out of you." What he didn't know was that I really enjoy fighting. After seeing the Power Rangers punch those clay soldiers, I begged my parents for karate classes. After that was judo in high school, BJJ in college, and an attempt to fight in the UFC after college. I thought I was tough right up until actual professionals hit me. Then I thought, wow, I'm actually a huge wimp, and went for a graduate degree. So I told OC, sounds good, we need to sign some forms first though. Here's my availability, let's find a time and meet at this gym. You want boxing or grappling gloves? I thought for sure he'd make up an excuse, but he agreed. So we set up a time and everything. The small town court gossip mill did its thing, and a couple of court staff showed up to watch the fight. In an anticlimactic turn of events, OC was a no-call, no-show. The next time OC and I appeared before the judge, who did not show up to watch the fight, the judge made a snarky comment like, "Is this really worth fighting over?" And OC didn't have anything to say to that. Disappointed you didn't show up in court with a huge golden belt adorned with a gem-embossed buckle. Other than that, great way to handle the situation. And our last story. My Dad versus HOA, a tale of a lawnmower, an alligator, and a yard tool. When I was a kid, my parents owned a house in Florida that was part of an HOA. Behind the house was a lagoon or pond or whatever, and the backyard went right up to it. Basically, the backyard ended at a little slope that went right down into the water. One day, my parents got a notification from the HOA that the grass in the back was unkempt, and this was a violation, and there would be a fine if we didn't cut it. What they meant was the grass on the slope into the pond needed to be cut, even though that wasn't part of the property. My dad said, whatever, broke out the lawnmower and got to work. Just as he was finishing up, a huge freaking alligator comes rushing up out of the water. My dad does the only thing logical. He lets go of the mower and runs. The mower runs down the slope, hits the alligator, pissing it off most likely, and sinks halfway into the water. My dad leaves it there because he ain't going to mess with no scaly death machine. A week or so later, another notice arrives, this time about yard tools being left out. The mower in the pond surrounded by agitated miniature water dragons. And yes, there was a fine. Dad said F them and refused to pay the fine or any HOA dues ever again, and they added monthly fines for non-payment. Made a point of specifically never paying the HOA every month when he gave the mortgage to the bank. The bank didn't care since they got their money. Who cares about some crappy board? About a year later, when my parents sold the house the HOA came to collect, guess what my dad said? That's right, he said, F off, take my payment out of the lawnmower if the gator lets you. Then they drove off into the sunset. As far as we know, the lawnmower's still there in the water, guarded by scary dinosaurs. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.